So, little video on peg feeding. So this is actually Beth's lunch. So make sure you check that the label is right for the food you're giving. So L for lunch, T for tea, SAM for morning snack, and SPM for evening snack. And she'd always have a flush. Sometimes it's just water, and sometimes it's water and cranberry. And then you should have a feeding tube or giving set, and then your syringe as well. So this syringe has been used for a little bit, so the numbers have come off. It doesn't matter, you don't need the numbers for it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to prep and get ready. So just make sure that this is nicely mixed. Take the lid off carefully, whether you're doing it in the chair or whether you're doing it at the bedside. You're amused, Beth. We just need to make sure we're as clean and tidy as possible. So lifting Beth up slightly, so her bed is raised slightly. If she's in her chair, she's obviously sitting up already. That's the first bit of prep. Next bit is I'm going to put just the end of the syringe into the food, so I don't need to get the syringe totally covered. I'm pulling the syringe up. I want to stop before I get to the top. It doesn't matter about the numbers. You're just making sure the syringe doesn't come out the end, otherwise all the food will come out. Then very gently, you're going to tap it to knock off excess food, and also make sure that any bubbles move up. So there is a slight bubble there. Just tap it a bit more. That bubble will start to move up. So the next thing I need to do is I need to make sure this is totally clean because I don't want to drip anything. I'm going to wipe off the end, and then I'm going to get rid of this bubble again by tapping it. You don't have to get rid of really tiny bubbles, but that is a little gulp. So we want to just squeeze. So I'm pushing the syringe up and I'm popping this near the end. So if I over pushed and something came out, my tissue would collect it. Make sure that end is totally clear. And then we're going to connect to the feeding tube and put it through. Some people you might have seen have put this end in. Please don't do that because it gets all messy around there, and then it gets messy around the peg and the Beth's stomach gets messy. So connect it to the feeding tube. You're going to unclamp. So you'll have to work out how you hold your hands, but you've got this bottom one that you're going to pull out and the top one that's going to release. And then I'm going to slowly push it up. And I want it to stop about 1 centimetre before the end, because when I clamp, that does move slightly up, and if it's a little bit more liquidy, it will move a bit further up. So the next thing is connecting it to Beth. Dinner time, Beth. So the peg should freely move, so you can turn that, it doesn't matter if that moves. We're going to undo the little cap, and that little line there, we're going to line up with the line on the feeding tube. So I'm going to line it up. And you hear a slight click there, and then I'm going to twist it round, so you can see, so that this isn't going to release. So while you're making sure and knowing that you've done it right, just give it a little pull between the two, as if you're trying to pull the two apart. That should be nice and secure. If it hasn't clicked and you haven't been able to turn it and it's loose, it will just start spewing out. So when you first start, make sure you keep watching what's happening so that you can rectify anything. So then I'm going to unclip, and then I'm going to push through, and I'm going at a speed that I would say is 20 to 30 seconds to put a whole syringe through. So if there were markings on it and you could see all of these, you're probably going down 2 every second, something like that. So you don't want to push it down really fast into Beth's stomach, because otherwise it's that horrible feeling of being full suddenly. Equally, you don't want to go so slow that it takes forever. And in between having a tube fill and you going and getting some more, actually it's Beth gets a chance to rest and break from that. So then I'm going to clamp it. So always make sure you clamp. I'm going to unscrew this, and then I would generally say on the bed, stick it between here, keep it out the way. That end will have some food that's on the loose, so if you let that go, it will go wherever it lands, and we'll end up with splodges all over things. Similarly, sitting in the chair, lie it on the armrest of the chair is generally a good place to put it. I'm going to keep drawing up and doing this. So we want to do this until everything is eaten down the peg. So there are no bubbles in that one, so I don't need to spend ages getting them out. If towards the end of the meal and food it gets a bit thick, then You can add a little bit of the flush, but always make sure that there's 50 mils of flush left at the end that should go down clear liquid at the end. Sometimes things cannot be blended very well, that's my fault, and you might get bits or grainy bits in it that get stuck. So I'm going to clamp, undo, tidy away. If that happens, what you can do is you can either try pulling back slightly on the syringe, or you can try pushing even harder essentially, so just give it a little bit more welly than you have been. If it's still not moving, if something's still not moving, you can detach and you can get a fresh, smaller syringe, maybe a 20 ml syringe, and you can fill it with water and you can try pushing the water down, and sometimes the water, because it's thinner, will just go down. I have been told by, it wasn't a dietitian, who was it who told us, Beth? Someone told us that sometimes putting fizzy things down it is good, but we've never had to do that. So, pushing down. If you got to the point where the peg really wasn't moving and it was totally stuck and blocked, and you'd done all that you could, you would do a peg change if you still needed to feed. If you, what we don't want to do is leave feed in the actual peg. That's why we use the flush, to make sure it's all clean at the end. So we wouldn't really want to leave it. If, for example, you knew that we would be around in the next half an hour and you thought, well, I'll just wait and I'll ask Alan or Sarah if they can have a look, then, you know, that would be fine. So, getting towards the bottom, which means I'm getting air bubbles. And if you can see, we've used 2 pieces of kitchen roll, and just by being neat and tidy, you don't need to kill a rainforest. So, just make sure. You see this one, it's very hard to see probably on the video, but actually there's quite a bit of air at the end, so I'm going to push that up. There it is. So now, because I'm towards the end of the feed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in this last little bit there, and then I'm going to add in some of this water. And because it was relatively thick anyway, and I've got some lovely yummy stuff on the lid. I can't actually remember what it was there. I think it's cream cheese salad wrap. I think that's what it is. I'm giving it a shake so I can get all of the goodness off the sides. So you don't want to waste food at the bottom. You want to get as much out as possible. So lean the top to the side. Put the pointy bit of the syringe right at the bottom bit. I'm going to go again at the end in a second. Obviously it makes it a bit messier when you're going right to the bottom. Nearly there, Beth. Is it filling a hole? Yeah. Yeah, my tummy's rumbling there as well. I think actually I've just smelt sniff. It wasn't a wrap, it was naan. It was cream cheese naan and salad. Oh, and know why it's nice and smooth? It's got avocado in it. So actually, I don't know if you can see at the bottom, there's a really thick bit. It's got stuck at the bottom, so I don't want to lose that. So I'm going to add a little bit more water, and I'm actually going to use the end of the syringe to just try and wipe it off a bit. That'll be the best bit at the bottom there. And give it another little shake. So if you do end up with a little bit at the bottom, it's not the end of the world, but what we don't want to do is people just to stop part way and Beth miss half of her food. So when we make Beth's food up, if you think about an average healthy portion for a smaller adult, that does Beth for 2 days. So if you think about what you would have for lunch or tea, if it was a small healthy portion, and then divide it into 2, that's what Beth has. So we don't want to lose a quarter of it each time because it's not masses. Oops, I'm still a little tiny bit of air there. And then last bit, and then we're going to do the water. So the best way to do the water is to disconnect, and then we're going to take the plunger out of the syringe, making sure we're not dripping anywhere. We're going to join it back, and we're going to see if the water will go down. Now, because we've normally only got 50 and these syringes are 60, we could put the whole of it in and plunge if we need to. So I'm going to do that it is going down because the last bit had added water in it, and then I'm pouring at the pace that means I haven't got any air getting stuck in there. And they'll all go down. Do you like watching this bit there? Going down, down, down. And then I'm holding it to go down as straight as possible to let it go as low as possible. You can see the water's got to there. It's not going to go any further. So I'm just going to clamp it. I'm going to untwist the opposite way for locking. All the way around to that little dot again. And then I can pull it out. And then very importantly, the first thing that we do before we tidy anything else up is make sure the depth is all back and decent. So lid onto the peg, top down, and then we can clear up and go and take this for washing up. All of the tissues that have got food matter on them need to go into the bin in the studio or into the kitchen, not into this medicine bin, because otherwise the bedroom starts to smell of whatever you've eaten, curry or something. And that is peg feeding.